Hey everyone, it is Carol Garrison with Carol's Creative Escape, and in this video I'm going to share with you a couple different ways to make some very simple stamping type cards. We use that term when we're kind of limiting our supplies to basically cardstock, ink, and a stamp set. And these cards are great if you're a beginner. Maybe you're a little intimidated or overwhelmed when you see all the fancy cards that people make. I promise you, you will be able to make these cards and they will look very, very nice. You'll be proud to hand them out to people. And it may just be your start to making some of those really fancy cards that you're intimidated with today. It's also a great card technique if you need to make a lot of cards in a hurry. And sometimes it's also nice to just step back and make slightly less fancy cards if you're an experienced demonstrator or stamper and just need to get your juices flowing again a little bit for your creative side of things in the cards. So I am using a stamp set called Wildlife Wonder. This is a new stamp set in the January to June 2022 mini catalog. It features an image of a bear with kind of a shadow, or you could do a water, do it in a blue color. It could be water perhaps underneath them, a puddle, something like that. It's got an owl and then a wolf sitting on a rock. And then there's some kind of wildflower here. For all the great things you do, a note of thanks, you mean so much to me, sending birthday wishes, and to a great guy. So it's a nice collection of greetings. Can be very good for masculine cards, which can also be very challenging for us to make sometimes. But also just kind of a general card too. I like the note of thanks, although tonight I am not using that card or that image. I'm using almost every image in here. In fact, these are the only two that I won't be using tonight. So I've got kind of three different sets of cards. I am going to show you those cards and then we will walk through making one of the cards. So I've got a set that I am featuring. All of my cards, I should say too, tonight are made on the very vanilla note cards that we have available. Again, trying to keep this simple. If you're a new beginner stamper, you can buy a set of these cards. They come in a set of, I don't know if it says on here. There's a set of 20 and they just come. They are 5.5 inches wide by 7 inches and they're scored at 3.5 inches for you already. And they also include note card sized envelopes. So again, if you're new to stamping and don't have a lot of supplies, this is a great way to get started without having to invest in a lot of things. So the first card that I'm going to show you features the owl in the Wildlife Wonder set, and I've done it very, very basic. Let me get rid of that here, where I've just stamped the image 3 times and then a sentiment to a great guy, and on the inside, you mean so much to me. So literally I have done ink, paper, and the stamp set, nothing more to it. Okay, and then the next version of this card, just to dress it up a little bit, I did turn it so it's landscape instead of portrait. Again, I'm repeating the 3 owls with, I used the inside greeting on this card, you mean so much to me, and I have just the center owl. I cut out, I stamped it and then I cut out, it's called fussy cutting, and I did that and then just popped it up on dimensionals just to give it a little different look. But again, pretty much sticking with my paper, ink, and stamp set with the dimensionals as an add-on. And then my third card, again, you're going to see a repeat of the owls. I used that to a great guy, you mean so much to me. And what I actually did then is just layer 2 circles. Now, as a beginner, you may not have punches. I actually use circle punches on here. But there are many ways to get circles. You could even trace a circle and cut it out. If you know somebody, you could do squares instead of a circle even to get the same look. Actually, the reason I went this way is I originally was making this card and I caught an edge of my stamp and it left a mark by my sentiment. So I thought, how am I going to cover it up? And this was just a quick, easy way to do that. Okay, so Very simple, kind of a rust color. And those are my 3 owl cards. And then I repeated this process using the bear image that is included in this stamp set. And on my first card, just like with the owl, I simply stamped the bear. I love, love, love all the detail in here. The shading comes right in the stamp. This is literally stamped in ink and stamped onto the paper here. So there's already shadowing done in here for you. There's some lines on the fur. I didn't have to do anything but ink it and stamp it. And then sending birthday wishes. Okay, again, I wanted to show another way that you can do it. This is the exact same card. The only difference is I stamped this on another piece of the very vanilla cardstock, and I did the fussy cutting again to cut it out. Now, these images are pretty straight, so when I say fussy cutting, it really isn't that hard. You're just going around and trimming it. And once again, I set it up on dimensionals. When I use the word dimensionals, what I'm referring to is, I'm just looking to see if I even have a piece out here. It's just these hexagon shaped foam pieces that are sticky on both sides, and so you can stick it on the back of something, peel it off, and it'll raise up like that. I will show you this in the last card that I'm gonna share with you that we'll actually be making today. And then for my third card, again, just to step it up a little bit, but again, I'm not doing anything other than adding a piece of colored cardstock to it. So I've really stuck to my cardstock inks and stamp set. But again, I layered it using a coordinating color of paper, but if you didn't have this color, you could offset it with a different color. That wouldn't be a problem at all. Stamped the image, did my fussy cutting, move my birthday greeting to the top instead of the bottom, and here's a card. So again, we've got 3 very different looking cards, but all very simple stamping that a beginner could do, as well as a more experienced stamper. Okay, the last image that I used in here was the wolf, and again, like the other 2 cards, I started out simply using ink and the images on my cardstock. And then the next card that I made, it's exact same layout, but again, I fussy cut the wolf and put it on the dimensionals just to make it stand out a little bit. All right, so let me show you real quick how to make this card. I get my basic gray ink out because that's the color that I'm using. So the first thing I've got is my note card. And remember, it's already cut and scored, so I don't need to do anything. If you have some kind of a tool, this is a bone folder, just run it over the edge. You can also take a ruler or a pen or a pencil. What you're doing is it's called burnishing, and you're creating a good crease on your card here. Okay? And then I have cut a piece of the coordinating basic gray cardstock. This is, for those of you that are interested, 2 3/4 inches by 2 1/8. And I picked those measurements because it basically fits the size of my image here. And what I'm going to do on this one is I've just taken a piece of scrap cardstock that's in the very vanilla, and I'm going to open up my basic gray. Sometimes I can pop it that way, sometimes I can't. I'm going to ink up my image and stamp it. And then one thing I do whenever I've got open ink is I always close it so that I'm not working with an open ink pad, because I will stick my hands in it. And then I've got my paper snips here. These are just a real sharp, short cutting area. Great for cutting papers, getting into nooks and crannies. I don't use ribbon on these scissors. I've got a separate pair for that, just because ribbon can tend to dull things. And to fussy cut, I just work my way around, and as you can tell, I more or less am moving my paper as opposed to repositioning my scissors. Now, I will tell you, I am, as you can tell, left-handed, and when I was in grade school, all we had, if you're lefties of my age, you will remember exactly what I'm talking about, silly little green-handled scissors that I swear were never sharpened, most frequently used by your teacher to unplug glue bottles that were sealed over, so they also were dull and it came caked with glue. So my cutting skills are not necessarily the best, but I can do fussy cutting and I enjoy it. And generally you get better results, like I said, if you move the paper. Sometimes I'll snip off extra pieces like that. If you move your paper as opposed to moving your scissors to the shape, so you can see how I'm twisting and turning a little bit here, that tends to give you a better path around some of the nooks and crannies. And there's always that little bit that's left, like that. Okay, and so there I've got my image fussy cut out. Get rid of those scraps. And then what I am going to do is come back here, and I'm going to do this one slightly different layout simply because of the rectangle that I'm going to be putting this on. So the next thing that I'm going to do is actually assemble this. So I want to put, my layout's going to go kind of like this with my greeting stamped right next to it. So again, I'm not getting fancy at all with this, but it's allowing me to make a quantity of cards without any stress. So we'll add our adhesive to the back. And when I'm laying out cards, I do like to open my card base up just so that it's a flatter surface for me to work with. So I'm going to put that here. I'm going to stamp my greeting, and I'm doing that because this will be raised on here, and sometimes that can add challenges depending on placement. So I always try to get my foundation on here and then come back through and do the final assembly. So I'm stamping my sentiment, and you can see I picked up just a titch of my block, or the edge of my stamp on that. I'm not going to worry about that. It happens. Sometimes you can cover it up with a little bling or a ribbon, and sometimes you can't. But you know what, you guys? These are homemade cards, and they aren't always going to come out perfect, and that's okay. All right, so now I've got my wolf here, and I'm going to take the dimensionals that I told you about, and I'm just going to do probably kind of in the 3 corners. This is sort of triangular in shape. So I'm just going to put some on here. I will peel off the backs, and if you do use these dimensionals, you will find these backings on everything, including your bathroom floor, on the dog's nose, anything else. They just keep following you, but they're the handiest things. And so now I'm just gonna put it on here, and so again, with that 2-sided stickiness, you've got the ability to attach greetings to your cards or dimensional images. So here is my 3rd in this series of cards. So I kind of started with just pen and ink, or ink and stamp, but I fussy cut this out so it's raised, and then I just changed it up a little bit by putting in some cardstock behind it to make it pop just a little bit on the card. And again, if you didn't have this gray color, you could add another complementary color to the gray. What isn't going to go with gray? You know, whatever you have on hand, and that's going to allow you to make that wolf pop out just a little bit more. So I hope you found this helpful. I'm going to just lay out each of the cards based on how they were stamped, so you can get a quick reminder of that. So this is simply the cardstock ink and stamp set. Okay, and then we move to again sticking with the cardstock and ink, but cutting out each of the figures. these images and just popping them up a little bit. Pretty simple to do, and again, if you can stamp and cut, you can make this card. And then my third and final is to just add a little bit of color with a piece of cardstock to back the layout. And it doesn't have to be a lot. This is very little. This obviously fills most of the front of the card, and here's just a slight shape to offset it. So if you feel ambitious, I really would encourage you to grab this stamp set. Try a little bit of the simple stamping. Again, it's the Wildlife Wonder stamp set in the January to June mini catalog. Thank you. Have a great evening, guys.